Right, so recently in my adventures over on AliExpress, I came across a company called Aiboman, and they were doing a clearance sale, selling cheap graphics cards for £6. They didn't specify a model name, there was a few reviews on the listing, but they weren't doing it via their actual store, and the one review that did exist told me that it seems like they're just shipping out whatever returns they've received. So I thought for £6, you know what, it's a graphics card, and it does have what looks to be graphics card written on the packaging that's broken through. But why don't we get this open and find out if £6 random named graphics card return boxes are the way forward in 2026. I don't think they're gonna be, but we can get this open. I don't even think we're gonna need scissors. So, what exactly do we get? Oh, it is actually from Aiboman. I've never heard of them before, but I'm guessing they are a brand of some sort. Now that. So, big CGI robot, Turing shaders, Ansel, Studio. I don't know if it is actually going to be based on Turing, given this cost me £6. Is there anything else on it? We have the uses. Aiboman graphics card, gaming daily office, box includes graphic card, shock absorbing in a box. With our research and developing advantages, Aiboman designs a series of special high quality components for graphics and products. It can suit for 90% of the PC hardware. It runs World of Animals, Firestorm, Ice Storm. Yes, uses official drivers, Windows 7, Windows 10, Windows 11. Mentions Windows 11, so it is at least somewhat modern. But why don't we see what the Aiboman really is? I just thought for £6, it's got to be worth giving it a go. Okay, it's got packaging. I always love that they come with some sort of handwritten note. That's actually one of the more professional looking leaflets I've seen. I mean, don't be wrong, it's not exactly amazing, but they've put some effort into it. Don't connect it to your motherboard, connect it to your graphics card. And what else do we get? HDMI to VGA adapter. They love these for some reason, yet I never really see too many of them working. Oh, so you get two types of display brackets, low profile and normal. That's really quite nice. I don't know all too many people that are using to install their computer together, but you know, maybe that's the way forward with Aiboman. You don't use screws. And here it is. We still don't actually know what graphics card it is. There's no information on the back, no visible damage either, although saying that, the sticker is slightly ripped off, so someone may have actually had this apart. I mean, to be fair, it did say on the listing, there's no guarantee what card you're going to get, so maybe they just bundle these adapters in with all of them, but this actually has native VGA, so you could have all three as VGA ports. And the closer I'm looking, yeah, this is definitely someone's return unit, because that's loose. And the DVI port is rusty. Chances of this working relatively low, I want to say at the moment. How would you even end up with a rusty DVI port? Not that I could ever imagine the industry graphics card specialist, Aiboman, would ever mislead us with their Turing shaders. We're going to plug it in and make sure it works, and then I'm probably going to take this apart to find out what GPU core it's using, because something tells me this isn't using Turing. The HDMI doesn't fit. Unironically, for the specialist in the industry, the HDMI port's the wrong size. I'm not making this up. Right, it was positioned too far up. So to fit HDMI, you have to pull down the HDMI port using your lead. That's good, that's clever, that's in there good now. That ain't going nowhere. Genuinely isn't going nowhere, that's actually wedged in. Now it just has to give us a display. Over that, I'm 100% sure working HDMI port. Oh, no, we got a signal. We have got a signal. There we go. Right, let it boot to Windows, double check it works. We'll see if it's maybe got any drivers. It's forced the BIOS into safe mode, which is good. We'll just put that in there, just to add some aesthetics. You know what? Why don't we be really lazy about this? I'm sure Aiboman wouldn't lie to us, so we'll just plug in the internet and Windows will find drivers, and it's going to install as. What was Turing? RTX 2000 series? I mean, maybe it's even a 2080 Ti CGI robot. Right, we'll leave that for 5 minutes and see if it, see what it can do. Well, I've popped away, made myself a cup of tea, and it does look like we've got drivers, so if we just pop to GPU-Z, we can find out what our Aiboman graphics card is. I know it's going to be good. It can't just be normal. Right, let me bring you in closer. Well, so, it turns out the Aiboman graphics card is allegedly not an Aiboman, it's undefined, but more importantly, it's a GTX Titan. Yeah, Sure. The GTX Titan, famous for 48 unified shaders, 8 ROPs, 8 TMUs, and drives from 2017, does actually sound about right. So GTX Titan was 2013. Makes sense, because Nvidia would trust Aiboman to release the Titan first. I think it's just one of those things we all forget, is Nvidia didn't want everyone to have the Titan, but they said to Aiboman, you know what, you could do it better than anyone else. Because I mean, look at this stupidly large cooler Nvidia needed. Nah, Aiboman, they did it like that. I mean, I want to launch a game. I've never got to use a Titan before. This is exciting. 40.8 frames per second, it said there. We used up all our Titan power in the first 1 second, because now we're at 0.6 frames per second. That is really bad. Oh, it did hit 0.7, and ironically one of the worst scores we've ever had, but apparently nearly bang on average apparently for the GTX Titan. I didn't realise it performed so poorly, but I guess that's just how Kepler performs. What even is this? Yeah, well, we'll go ahead, we'll do some gaming. Actually more controllable than I thought it would be? I mean, it's a low resolution, but this looks like rather high quality settings. What is it defaulted to? I mean, it's telling the computer it's a Titan. Yeah, ultra settings, that isn't gonna work. They need to understand that it's so powerful it loops back round to needing 800 by 600 in low settings, so we'll restart that and see what it does then. Actually, I can tell you what frame rate it is because it's now loading. It's getting near 30 frames per second, which for a supposed GTX Titan is downright terrible. But for a £6 graphics card that did arrive in a box of some sorts is not too terrible. You know what I think we're going to do is, I think we're going to take it apart, just double check what it actually is underneath, and then maybe cook it with voltages to see if we can push this thing to the stage where, I mean, it's never going to get close to being a GTX Titan, but playable. I mean, it's ugly, and it is now dropping to the low 20 frames per second, but I don't believe Aiboman scammed me. How could Aiboman scam me? They are the industry graphics card specialist. It tells me on the box. It's a rarity in life when someone's been in here. But there is so much thermal paste, you can see it vertically coming off the board. It is also LP to RAM, so not terrible. I remember that clocks up okay. So G520 LP revision 1.2. So this is a GT520? Yeah, not quite a Titan. And I'm fairly sure is actually Fermi based. Well, they're going to have to start selling this as a 3 graphics card package. The board itself says GT520, the drivers say GTX Titan, MSI Afterburner says GT610. So what is it? I mean, it's a 520 running a custom BIOS for the 610, which is renamed to the Titan, which is obvious when you know how. But yeah, it overclocks slightly. It's running at like the mid 70 degrees. Performance has technically increased, but I'm going to run this through some benchmarks and then, oh no, it's died. Yeah, that's too much. Oh no, it hasn't died. Right, I'm going to run it through some benchmarks. I'm going to see what it can actually do. Yeah, Aiboman £6 graphics card. This isn't a scam. This is clearly going to game like a Titan. I mean, if it can even just game like a £6 graphics card, I'll be happy. It has real problems with Steam. I've gone back and tried another graphics card, open Steam fine. With this graphics card in here, look, Steam is open. I can see it down the bottom here. It is actually open as a window, but you can't actually bring it to the, you can't actually get to it. I've got no clue at all. The Titan has its problems. The overclock gained us 0.1 frames per second on average. Which is actually close to a 10% increase. Actually, slightly more than... It's an increase. Ladies and gentlemen, another golden sample, courtesy of Aiboman. Legendary. The best score previously was 108, but with my very minor overclock, 118. Legendary. This is what I'm saying. Nvidia always sent these guys the best samples. You don't get a Titan that performs like that with a score of 101. Without trying. Yeah, that's really bad. Anyway, benchmarking time. So our £6 graphics card from Aiboman, which apparently is the GTX Titan. In reality, it's actually a GT 520, which was actually rebranded by Nvidia to the GT 610, so that bit's not a lie, but they've done it in a funky way where even the board is saying it's from a 520. But anyway, that's besides the point. What are the real specifications? Well, it's not based on Turing, like the graphics card box would imply. It's not based on Kepler, the same architecture as the Titan. Instead, it is based on Fermi, being the 40nm GF119 architecture. In terms of VRAM, you do get 2GB. However, it is 2GB of DDR3, which is LP to RAM, which can overclock a little bit, running through a measly 64-bit memory bus. By default, it will pull drivers from Windows Update dated around 2017. However, it will also work with the latest final Fermi drivers. They won't fix the problems with the card because there are some, but they will also function. You have 48 pixel shaders, 8 ROPs, 8 TMUs, and for release date, I have no idea how modern these are. They've got to have been made at least after 2018 given the architecture names on the box, but who actually knows? Power consumption is anywhere from around 10 to 30 watts under full load, and you can pick these up from £6 to £10 when they show up on AliExpress. They seem to get rid of them in bulk loads, so keep your eyes peeled, and I don't doubt that you too could own an Aiboman clearance graphics card. Given this is from the graphics card specialists themselves though, Aiboman, you'd imagine that they will have at least factored in that you want more performance out of this. And yes, you can overclock the graphics card like I've done today, and that's probably why they've applied seemingly oodles of thermal paste, enough for at least 10 of these graphics cards in one go, but we were actually able to achieve a decent overclock, gaining around 20% performance by boosting up nearly as high as it would let us, going from 85 in Time Spy up to 101, which doesn't sound too bad if you don't know what these numbers mean, because just what do they mean? Well, with a score of 101, this means that it is around a third of the performance of an R7 240, or around a quarter of the performance of an Intel Twin Lake N150i GPU. Compared to pretty much any other display adapter, even a DDR4 1030, it is just paling in comparison. By the time you actually get to graphics cards you might want to use, it is merely 1/10, 1/30th of their power. So yeah, this card is not great, even in the synthetic testing. Now, one of my most major gripes with this card is, and I'm not too sure what's causing this because I've not seen it on any other scam cards, not that this card is a scam, I pretty much bought this knowing full well it was returned, so we don't know who's at fault for flashing the BIOS, but at the same time, what we do know is that it really struggles with hardware acceleration, so even if you are looking at this as what it really is, a display adapter, it is not very good at it. See, to launch games, what I would have to do is bring up Device Manager, which would close itself, well, not close itself, but make itself hidden to us, and then I'd have to disable the graphics card to get rid of hardware acceleration to launch Steam or a program, launch the game, so it would appear in the Quick Start menu down in the start bar, and then I could wait for it to crash, re-enable the graphics drivers, and then I could launch it from the start bar, and it would work. So benchmarking this card has been very tedious because I've had to do that for each individual stage of the benchmarking, so it's not been an ideal situation whatsoever. So if people are going to be commenting saying, oh, why are you gaming on this graphics card? Clearly this is a display adapter. 1, it calls itself a Titan. 2, it says gaming on the box in multiple places. And 3, it's funny, because I genuinely don't know how this is going to perform, and we have got it overclocked. Then again, I've also never bothered looking at the 520 or the 610 in many years and can't actually remember how good they were. So let's find out ourselves with the benchmarks. In terms of actual popular titles out there that could theoretically run on your £6 Aiboman graphics card, GTA 5 is pretty much the pinnacle of them. We maintained our same normal settings in 800x600, but thanks to having an overclock running, we did actually see ourselves break the 30 FPS barrier. Well done Aiboman, congratulations, a game from 2015 does actually work on your graphics card. With an average of 31 frames per second and visuals that were largely hampered down by the awful resolution, it wasn't too bad if you can ignore the artifacting. It didn't artifact in any other games, but GTA 5 really was pushing this to the limits of what it considered stable. Keep in mind, it didn't crash. It will just give you artifacting if you want above 30 frames per second. Moving over into the world of GTA Online, which as we know doesn't quite utilize graphics cards as well as it should, we did see the artifacting disappear, but because of this we did lose 3 frames per second on average, now dropping down to averages of 28 frames per second. Yes, it's underneath 30 frames per second, but I do have to give them credit here. For a £6 graphics card running GTA Online Legacy, it did actually run better than I was expecting, to the stage it was controllable. So it wasn't great, but it does work. But what about all those people out there that are looking at AliExpress thinking, I just want to play Counter-Strike 2, I really want to get into this competitively, but I haven't got much money to afford to do it. And then you stumble across the Aiboman graphics card sale, and you think, you know what, this is my chance. Well, with low settings in 720x480, simpler maps were actually playable. I mean, you couldn't do much more than Dust 2 or Office, because any of the newer maps just fill up the very small and very slow VRAM pool, and performance just goes out the window. But it can manage 36 frames per second on average, with 1% lows down to 31 FPS when we were playing a match of Office, which is actually higher than I was expecting. We had to use by 720x480 as the resolution. However, if you were looking for a slightly more competitive edge, you can go back to CSGO. Now, our average did shoot up to nearly double, around 55 frames per second with the same setting selected, but our 1% lows didn't really improve whatsoever. So, although we saw a higher average, you definitely noticed the frame rate fluctuations a lot more. Especially when there was lots of, well, people on screen, it was almost like wall hacks, because you could tell if someone was going to be there by how much your frame rate slowed down. So, CSGO was definitely playable, but it was also the same as Counter-Strike 2, where you really wouldn't want to. Mount & Blade Bannerlord is seemingly one of the most optimized titles in recent years, so I thought, you know what, maybe it'll run on the Aiboman. With very low settings in the same 720x480 resolution, which is seemingly nearly what the original Xbox was using, to be honest, we return an average of 32 frames per second and 1% lows down to 21 FPS, which was primarily when you were surrounded by enemies, but of course keep in mind the battle size does scale with the settings in this game, so this is with quite a low battle size. That isn't to say it's unplayable, because in a lot of the early game, you will run into encounters where you are dealing with battles much smaller than the actual built-in benchmark is at these graphic settings, and it does stick closer to that 30 FPS target. I even loaded up a custom battle to confirm this, because for some reason I'm taking benchmarking this card seriously, and yes, it would get in and around 30 frames per second and was controllable. It looks downright hideous and you're probably better off playing Warband, but hey, it can at least launch a modern title. Next up we have BeamNG, and no, you are not going to be running the latest 0.39 version everyone's excited about, but I did go back to the last version that works on Windows 7 that I keep on hand, which is 0.34. With very low settings in the jungle, with the 720x480 resolution once again, we returned unplayable frame rates. I wasn't really expecting much. This game is very, very heavy on memory, and we are using Elpida DDR3 RAM, which to be fair we have overclocked, but is still only capable of mustering 20 frames per second to, well, its very best, and 1% lows down to 15 frames per second, which would happen anytime you were going through thicker foliage areas. This isn't to say you can't play any BeamNG on your Aiboman graphics card, because if you use these same very low settings and the same resolution with a simpler map like The Hill, you can return, and this is a very dramatic moment, 31 frames per second on average, with 1% lows down to 27 FPS, which was playable. Yes, it's hideous, yes, the resolution's low, yes, the menus are blurry, but Aiboman can manage it here. I don't doubt the original Titan would, well, it'd probably blow this thing away, but still, the game does say you've got a Titan, so trying to change the graphic settings around will also take you about half an hour, because it likes to crash when you do it. If you go back to any older or more classic titles like Skyrim with its original DirectX 9 release, it actually does better than I was expecting. I was thinking we're going to need a lower resolution than this, but no, with low settings in 800x600, it does return a playable 48 FPS average and 1% lows down to 36 frames per second. These are the types of resolutions and settings that people used to use with the Intel HD back in the day to play Skyrim, but you haven't really got to worry about the frame rate dropping beneath 30 frames per second. It's around twice as good as the old Intel HD, I'd say, on average, at least in games like Skyrim, which means that you can at least achieve a frame rate that you might want to play, even if the visuals are downright terrible. The frame times were bouncing all over the place, as is common in Skyrim when you're beneath 60 frames per second, but hey, you can take bouncing around frame times
because let's be honest, you could probably cap it to 30 FPS and maybe, just maybe, get yourself up to 720p if you did enough tweaking around, which I'm calling a win for the Aiboman. The Sims 4 has plenty of faults and plenty more DLCs, but one thing you can't take away from it is they have kept it surprisingly playable on lower-end hardware, to the stage where I was surprised that the game actually was able to run in 1080p with low settings. Now, I do think in later releases of the game, when it's set down to low, does some form of dynamic resolution scaling, because to me this looks closer to 720p than it does 1080p, but we'll take it as a win because that is at least the resolution it's reporting. This returns 78 frames per second on average, and 1% lows down to 66 FPS, so The Sims 4? You know what? Actually works pretty good. I mean, it doesn't look great, the resolution is certainly blurry because it's not a true 1080p, but hey, if you're buying an Aiboman graphics card, I mean, this is something they should be using on their marketing, 1080p gameplay. I mean, this is the first title that's been remotely close to saying 1080p, but it can do it in certain instances. On the other end of the simulation spectrum, we have City Skylines, where usually in this benchmark I try and expand our benchmark city, but unfortunately I found the frame rate too low, and despite the fact I know enough about this game that I can control it in the very blurry 640x480 resolution, for some reason there is pretty much no way to make City Skylines crisp when you're scaling it back this far. It just wasn't playable, with an average of 22 frames per second and 1% lows of 16. Maybe if you were building a very small village, it would probably net you a stable enough frame rate that you could get away with it, but I just let it do a camera pan over our city with the cinematic mode to get an idea of the frame rates, and yeah, 22 FPS, 1% lows down to 16. This is with the FPS boost mod, which is required to play this game, and it's just not going to be able to do it. So City Skylines is a write-off for Aiboman, and a real shame, because for me, if it could run this, maybe it'd be a redeeming factor. The most modern gaming it's really going to be able to do, though, is Minecraft, which is pretty fair, I suppose, if you were looking for a simple graphics card to buy off AliExpress that could play Minecraft. Yeah, the Aiboman can do it. Yes, you are going to need fast settings and a 720p resolution to run the latest 26.2 version, but it will net you an average of 51 FPS and 1% lows down to 43. Really, when it comes to resolution, the 64-bit memory bus and the DDR3 RAM pretty much means that you are limited to 720p, as going above this will just destroy the frame rate. 900p would bring you down to just beneath 30 FPS, and 1080p becomes a slideshow in Minecraft of all things. The Aiboman is really not a gaming graphics card, despite what they say, but you know what, for most people, Minecraft in 720p with these settings is good enough. I mean, let's be honest, I can see the visuals on screen, and I don't think increasing the resolution is particularly necessary, but still, even in Minecraft, you are looking at 720p as your very maximum if you want to play the latest version. But finally, can the Aiboman graphics card play Crysis? Well, you won't be able to launch Crysis Remastered. I did try because I thought it'd be funny to see it do it, but no, you will be forced to run the original release of Crysis, which will run with the DirectX 10 mode and low settings in 800x600. And to be fair, I wasn't expecting playable frame rates, but it does actually deliver around 43 FPS on average, and 1% lows down to 36 frames per second, which was a much better showing than I really thought it'd be able to do. The Fermi architecture that underlies this graphics card is surprisingly good in DirectX 9, 10, and early entry DirectX 11 for what this card really is. And when you do scale that resolution back enough, then it can do a little bit of that style of gaming. I mean, we saw it before with Skyrim, and Crysis goes on to confirm it. That yes, it can do some older titles, but resolution and settings won't be on your side. But hey, it is at least running Crysis, which Aiboman, if you're listening to this, you should be putting that on the box. I mean, you probably don't have the copyright to do it, but then again, Turing shaders. So, overall gaming performance is downright abysmal is probably one of the best ways of describing it. Yeah, I wasn't expecting much going into this when I saw the specifications and pretty much found out what it was based on. But yeah, it's not a gaming card, despite what they say on the box. I mean, it can do a bit of Minecraft in 720p. I mean, it can do some simpler older titles up to sort of say like Skyrim. But yeah, a GTX Titan this is not. I mean, GTA 5 will work in 800 by 600, but we had to get it overclocked up to the highest it would go, which induced artifacting, only in GTA 5 to be fair, but that was just to get it above 30 frames per second. Other than that, you literally can't run things on this. I mean, yes, we knew it was going to be a turd, but yes, 64-bit memory bus, you're hampered on resolution, DDR3 going through that, even worse, and when you factor in you've got 48 shaders, 8 ROPs, 8 TMUs, it really just doesn't have the power to do anything. Being based on Fermi, I don't know how good the DirectX 12 support's going to be through these rather sketchily implemented drivers that say it's a GTX Titan, but TimeSpy does at least let you, this proof of concept, you could launch some early DirectX 12 titles, but they aren't going to run. And if they do, it's probably not going to run well at all. Is there any serious point to doing actual power consumption testing and thermals? I mean, I can tell you now immediately, yeah, it pretty much has zero fan control. Whatever fan speed it's running at idle, that is the maximum fan speed it has. So it's quiet, but it does mean that in actual workloads, for example gaming, you'll be hitting around the mid-70s, and if you throw it up into Firmark, well, it will be running anywhere from sort of 80 to 86 degrees, which is about where it peaked out at. This thing gets hot, it gets very toasty. Then again, I mean, they've given you ample thermal paste for it, so yeah, this was also with an overclock, so I suppose if you got rid of that, maybe it'd be slightly better. But yeah, what's actually more important is trying to find a redeeming factor for this card. So that's what I set out to do. I wanted to find at least something this card could perhaps actually be good at, because at the moment, it's not good as a display adapter, and it's not particularly good at gaming.
Well, this without a doubt may actually be one of the worst graphics cards I've ever had the misfortune of testing, because if it was just left as is, I mean, it'd be fine. But as it stands at the moment, because it's reporting as being things it's not, I mean, the board itself says 520, the drivers are marked as 610, and then the name overall is marked as Titan. It's ridiculous. But I've been trying to think what hardware you could possibly pair this with to actually make it decent. There's no point using Linux, it's Fermi. It's not going to do much. So I was thinking, maybe a Pentium 4? Maybe this can be dragged down by something equally as terrible? It runs hot, by the way. Like, that is dead hot, 84 degrees. I mean, it is running Firmark. But yeah, let's swap out this computer and see if a Pentium 4 redeems it. I'm assuming it can run Windows XP? Did it say it can run Windows XP? No, it says Windows 7 to Windows 11. It is recommended to use Windows 10 and 11 operating systems, yeah, because it pulls fake drivers. So I was doing some testing, not for a video for myself, with the Pentium 4, so our mesh gaming computer is actually set up with a processor that may actually be bad enough to limit this, or to match it, as it were. I also just want to see if maybe an older version of Windows can maybe fix the display issues, because the fact that hardware acceleration causes an application not to show when this is used makes this redundant as a display adapter. Then again, maybe that's the reason this was a return and a clearance thing. Maybe there's just something wrong with this model. I'm also hoping it works in older computers, because, let's be honest, we haven't actually tried yet. But this was set up with a version of Windows XP, so I'm hoping with a little bit of faffing about, we can see if maybe Windows XP is a good use for it. Because I mean, if you can pick these up for under £10, maybe it's a good retro solution. I'm trying so hard to be optimistic. Yeah, I mean, usually the scams are sort of funny. This has just been painful. But then it's also not a scam, because they told me it was a clearance graphics card, returned because it had issues, and it looks like it's a returned graphics card that has issues. Is it the wonderful HDMI port not working again? Ah, there we are. It was just a funny input. So here's my plan. I've seen these cropping up on AliExpress for the last year or so, and I can completely understand that they are just stock they want rid of. But maybe, for someone out there, this could be a viable idea. I mean, yeah, it does work on Windows 11 if you don't mind working around the issues. We could reflash the BIOS, that would likely fix a lot of the problems. Your average person's not going to do that. So, does it maybe work better on XP? We're here with absurdly high resolution Windows XP, Pentium 4, 3GHz. It still installs as a GTX Titan, but it's smart enough to know better. So Windows XP out here with better scam protection than modern Windows, because as much as it's tricked it into saying GTX Titan, it tells you it's a GT 610 beneath it. Yeah, at least you haven't got to worry about that, but it has installed drivers, I don't think there's any games on this install, so I'm probably going to have to install something, unless we want to just play pinball, like that's on here. So I'll whack some games on here, we'll see if it does anything. Well, with some uplifting news, despite everything else being broken with the naming scheme, NVIDIA Control Panel now works. It only seems to work on XP, it doesn't seem to want to work on Windows 11. But yeah, we do actually get some controls. We can manage 3D settings. Yep, it takes a while to get there, but we can do controls, so that's something that's working. If we open Fraps, what if we... Oh, that's nice. I can't tell if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm nostalgic for it doing that, but shouldn't do that with a graphics card. 800 by 600 will even go to the effort of setting the monitor up correctly. Well, visual quality's good. I mean, it is dropping a couple of frames here in the 30 FPS capped part. Okay, that's a bit better. I mean, it's not a locked 60 FPS, but it's decent output quality because it's digital. And it is getting in and around 60 frames per second in an original Xbox era title. I mean, at the same time, that does mean that if you can use it on Windows XP, you do get the appeal of classic gaming, where this is kind of matching. I mean, it's better than an original Xbox, which places it above a lot of the GeForce 3 kind of series, unless we're talking about older effects that this can't manage, because it physically doesn't have the hardware or the driver support. But for games that aren't calling on that, yeah, I mean, if you want to play Halo, it can do Halo at like 60 frames per second without all too many problems, which is nice to see. I mean, it's 800 by 600, but it is high setting, so we get the fancy effects on there, and we get a nice frame rate. So, Halo's a bit of a winner. What if we step it up a little bit? Try a little bit of Half-Life 2. You've got to keep in mind, we are running the Pentium 4 in here, which is awful. Don't get me wrong, I love the Pentium 4, but it's not a great CPU, but this is also not a very good GPU, despite it saying graphics card on the box and a load of other nonsense. What's it defaulted to? 1024 by 768 with high settings. Interesting. Yeah, neither the Pentium 4 or the GT 610 Aiboman Special Edition that thinks it's a Titan is really struggling. The Pentium 4 is not exactly fantastic, but if you were looking at building yourself a retro Windows XP PC, this is actually not a terrible pairing. I mean, it's playing through Half-Life 2 with high settings pretty much fine. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of other cool options you could go for, but I don't know, maybe someone is really a huge fan of Aiboman and wants to build a PC around them. I think I found the processor to pair it with. It's the Pentium 4. Because you can run Windows XP, it's going to be nice and smooth. I mean, don't get me wrong, this is a bit of an overkill setup for a Pentium 4. But yeah, it's doing fine. It's not dropped beneath 30 FPS, it's usually between sort of 42 to 65 frames per second, which is not bad going from both the Pentium 4 or the GT 610. I was trying to find something to be optimistic about in this, and I think I found it. It's purely a pretty good graphics card to use. If you're dealing with an old processor, you don't want to put too much load on things because you don't want a huge bottleneck there. I mean, personally, I don't really care about a CPU bottleneck if that's the point of the system. I mean, don't get me wrong, this is something they're selling as a brand new product in 2026, and it works best with a Pentium 4 from 20 years ago. Right, where's the limit gonna be for a system like this? We've seen Halo isn't a problem, Half-Life 2 isn't really a problem either. I mean, we could try Crysis real quick. I'm a little bit curious if Crysis is gonna perform better. It set itself all to low, which is where we wanted it. Let's see if Crysis performs any better. To be fair, it did pretty good over on Windows 11. It's not too far away from the maximum frame rates we were seeing over in Windows 11. I think we've done it. I think we've actually found a use for it. If you are someone using the Pentium 4 in 2026, I don't know who you are, then yeah, you know what? Aiboman have got you covered. Because yes, your graphics card will be rusty, yes it is kind of like a scam, but your computer's going to tell you you've got a Titan in here, when in reality, you've actually got the perfect pairing for the Pentium 4. A GT 520 that's using GT 610 naming, that's actually calling itself a GTX Titan. Because this is working fine. Yeah, I have no qualms with this at all. That is about how it was running on Windows 11, but with some slightly worse frame times when the Pentium 4's bogging down. Redemption found. Pair it with an awful enough processor from 20 years ago, and you'll be equally as disappointed by both components to the stage where you're impressed. That's my takeaway.
So there we have it, the £6 Aiboman clearance graphics card. And I'm reluctant to say it's a scam because they do make it very clear. It's not like they're telling me it's a Titan. This is a clearance unit they don't want, a return, just... It can be a multitude of things from these, apparently, at least from what the reviews say and what the actual description says. And this seems to be something they do every, maybe, quarter. They just get rid of cards they don't want, or returns like this. So I don't know if this was an original scam made by someone else under their branding, and then it didn't work out, so they tried to return it. The weird thing about this is they don't sell it under their own store name. It is sold under random store names. So, for all I know, Aiboman is completely legit, and is not complicit in this in the slightest. Then again, what else would fit in that box when it's also claiming it's got churring shaders, which I'm actually fairly sure isn't actually the RTX 2000 series, it was the GTX 1660 sort of range, I think, off the top of my head. Either way, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I bought this on a whim when I was actually getting bits I needed from China. I thought, oh, I've got free postage, I can bundle that in for the sake of £6. And, it was more fun than I was expecting, because I wasn't expecting anything this ridiculous. I was expecting maybe just a display adapter in a grey box, not actual branding, instruction manuals, flashed BIOSes and firmware, and just downright one of the worst gaming experiences I've ever had. But I suppose if you're desperate for a graphics card for your Pentium 4 Windows XP system, maybe consider it, because it actually wasn't too terrible. Then again, there's so many more fun and cool options you could go for, that unless you're looking for something that is just not going to really use any power and is probably so basic it's unkillable, then yeah, probably don't. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching, I hope you've enjoyed, and good night.